your 9+1. So this workshop is called Your 9+1 Rights and How They Empower You. We're going to be going over what those rights are, what those mean for you on your campuses, and also how to just be an effective representative for your students. I want to introduce our presenters today. My name is Catherine Squire. I'm the Vice President of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, and I'm a current student at San Joaquin Delta College. I'll go ahead and have our other presenters introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Aschenbach. I'm a faculty member at Lassen College, and I'm Secretary for the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Blevins, and I am the Vice President of Regional Affairs for the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, and I'm a student at Grossmont College.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you two. So before we start, I just want to give a little overview of what some of the information we're going to cover in this workshop consists of. We're firstly going to teach you about your 9+1 rights, and Cheryl's going to kind of dive into that section a little bit more, give you some examples of the committees you might see on your campus, why it's important to have your voice on those campuses. In participatory governance, we're going to talk about how you have an impact on your campus at that local level. We're also going to go through some best practices for you as a student representative on those committees that you serve on, what you can do to best represent your students, how to connect with the committees you're serving on, how to form those important relationships. And then at the end of this presentation, we'll just go over some statewide opportunities that our organization offers for you. And we also have an additional resource for you to access, which we'll get into. All right, so we're just going to start off with your 9+1 rights. So your 9+1 rights are guaranteed to you through Bill AB 1725. These are the 9 basic areas that you have a right to be involved with as a student, both locally and statewide. And so I'll just go ahead and read those off to you. If you have any questions about, what these areas might be any further, please feel free to ask them. And then either myself or Cheryl will kind of clarify that area for you. So you have a right to be involved with grading policies, codes of student conduct, academic disciplinary policies, curriculum development, courses or programs which should be initiated or discontinued, processes for institutional planning and budget development, standards and policies regarding student preparation and success, student services planning and development, and student fees within the authority of the district to adopt. So these are your 9 basic rights, but the +1 in your rights is very important because it means it accounts for anything else that your college or district thinks that will have a significant impact on students. So anything, you as a student, you recognize what's going to affect you and what's going to affect your peers as well, right? So that +1 is really to safeguard that right you have to be involved in anything regarding students. I'll just leave a couple seconds here for questions, but Cheryl's really going to take it over and dive into this a little bit more.
No questions in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. Alrighty, so I'll go ahead and move on and I'll pass it off to Cheryl.
Thank you, Catherine. So the Student 9+1 is in Title V. As Catherine mentioned, it was put into code, and actually in Ed Code, those rights, by AB 1725, but then we see, the details of that in Title V. At the same time, the students have a 9+1, the faculty have a 10+1. And our details for that are also in Title V, slightly different section. But the purple bullet or purple circle, student government, really the student government on your local campus should be involved or at least aware of what's going on in all those different areas. At the same time, on the other side of the slide, the Academic Senate in the light blue bubble should be aware of everything on its 10+1. You'll notice there's definitely some overlap. Grading policies is the top item on the left-hand side for students. It's the third item on the list on the right-hand side for Senate. That's in no way, reflecting what's most important or not. It's just, however this was numbered at some point. But we both are, as faculty, we have an interest and an impact on grading policies, just as students should absolutely have input and some say relative to grading policies. And there are cases in the state where perhaps the faculty senate, academic senate, has moved forward with a proposal maybe to add or subtract plus minus grading on a campus. And the students either have supported that and helped to move it through, or the students have said, wait a minute, we have concerns about this, and fleshed it out. And often the student input is what ultimately is carried out and carried through. And so being able to collaborate between the senates, the student senate and the academic senate on a campus in conversations like that are really important. You'll notice codes of student conduct that's pretty unique to students, although there may be things like honor codes that the Senate will work with a little bit. Academic standards the Senate will work with a little bit, and so still there's a little bit of overlap there. Disciplinary policies, again, there's typically student-centered, although again, faculty may have a little bit of input relative to what they think discipline should be relative to policies, but it's really the policy in general, but it should be crafted and shaped and supported ultimately by students. Curriculum development, as students taking classes, as well as faculty teaching classes and responsible for programs, we both have an interest in what happens and what options you have for degrees, for certificates, for transfer possibilities. And so we both have input into that. So we could keep on going through the list, but when you're looking at what does this look like in practice on our campus, and where can you as a student representative have some input, these are a few major places. I say the top two are either through the Senate's, student and faculty senate, through the curriculum committee, or through the college governance council. Curriculum committees, many in the state have a spot for a student, and yet we often hear that students don't attend those meetings even when invited, and there's faults on both sides for that. Sometimes faculty don't make adjustments to the meeting schedule to fit students, and sometimes students are intimidated by what's going on in a curriculum meeting. You're walking into a space that some folks have been involved in conversation on various elements of curriculum for years. And so we on campuses, we want to try to welcome students as much as we can, and faculty, we can do a better job of that. But you can see curriculum committees are where things like degree and certificate requirements are talked about, curriculum development happens, conversations about programs that should be initiated or discontinued at some point have to come through curriculum. So any of those blue arrows heading to the darker blue curriculum committee bubble, those are the kinds of conversations that happen around curriculum committee. And so it's a great place to know where that stuff is happening and make sure locally you have a student voice in that room and as part of those conversations. The orange bubble, the College Governance Council, that is where generally leadership of all the different groups on campus come together. Faculty Senate, student or student government, administration, sometimes management, classified professionals, leadership in all those different areas come together as the true participatory governance place on campus. I will warn you, not every campus has a full council. Most do, but not quite all. But it's a great place to look and see where are those conversations happening. And if we look at the orange arrows pointing to that bubble, you see things like codes of student conduct might come through there, standards and policies regarding student preparation and success, processes for budget and planning, policies for student prep, I already said that, but generally policies come through this space. And again, the student voice is critical when we're talking about policies and putting things into a process that involve or impact students directly. It's also a great place for students to advocate for something, part of that 9+1. A case on my own campus a number of years ago, students were the ones who started the conversation around becoming a smoke-free campus. And I'm pretty sure that's where it started on other campuses as well. And so if there's something that students feel is important, that's a great place to take that conversation from your local student government into that space for dialogue. The green bubble, planning and operational committees, they're slightly different committees. The planning in particular are generally what we call governance committees, and that should mean that there is representation from the different groups, faculty, administration, students, management, classified professionals. And so students should definitely have a seat on those planning committees. It may be planning out beyond the point that that particular student participant is going to be attending the college, but you're setting precedent and having input for students that follow you. Operational committees are less likely to have student input, although some campuses are really good about honoring the student voice, even when we're talking about office and operational elements. But Those are some places where you're going to find the 9+1 and the 10+1 in action. And I would absolutely advocate for staying in touch with, as student government participants and leaders, stay in touch with your academic senate participants and leaders. Who are your senators on the academic faculty side? Who are your leaders in the academic senate? So many times, as you can see by this, we're advocating and working in the same arena. So let's work with each other, because we'll be stronger together. I don't see any questions in the chat, but feel free to ask questions as we go.
Any questions for Cheryl? You can raise your hand as well. Oh, kind of what separates them.
I didn't
No
hear that
questions
question.
in the chat, Chair.
Okay. Cheryl, did you want to add something?
I didn't hear that there was a question.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on here. So now our VPRA is going to get into some of the best practices that you can adopt in being the representative for your participatory governance committees on your campus.
Slide. Catherine, sorry.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. All right, there we go. All right, so the best thing to do is before your meeting is when you get appointed to these committees, you want to make sure that you have a relationship with the chair of that committee. And you want to make sure that at least it's an introduction before the committee actually meets. Because something that helped me when I was going into my curriculum committee was I met with the chair. I met with our masterclass scheduler, Marcia Rayburn. I love her to pieces, and that helped me then go in. I had a friendly face. Because something that you're going to see when you go into these meetings, and it's not their fault at all, it's that they've known each other. These faculty members have known each other for years on end in some cases. And you are a student who, maybe the student before you, it was a vacant seat. So it's now that they have a student coming in, and they want student participation. I think is the biggest thing to understand, is that they would like to hear from the students regarding a lot of the issues that they are talking about, because they serve students. We are all here to serve students, to educate students, and to help each other. So another good practice is to gather some past agendas. Just look at what the committee has been doing prior to going in. Maybe there's a big topic of discussion around, if it's a curriculum committee, maybe a degree that they're trying to pass through. Maybe it's a course deletion. Speak with your constituents to gather opinion on ongoing committees. So really talk to the students. You are the liaison from the student government, from your SBA to this committee. And that is not something to take lightly. Maybe the atmosphere is very joyous and it's light, and it's because they're very nice, the topics aren't that heavy, but you represent the students of your campus. And sometimes that's 10, 20, 30, 40,000 students that you have to bring to this committee. So just make sure that you do gather opinions back from your constituents to the committee to make sure that you're adequately representing them. And also, this is a little one that I added in, but just as important, make sure that you know the terms being discussed in your committees. There are a bunch of acronyms that are in the Community College Association. I did not know what the ASJ, I still can't, I still don't know it. It's the accreditation for community and junior colleges. It's the ASSJC, oh my gosh, okay. Anyways, it's the accreditation. I know, Cheryl, it is funny. It's the accreditation. They'll throw all these acronyms at you because, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just, there's a lot of terms. So sometimes the student government, they have like booklets of terms, of frequently used terms. That's really good to have on you. Let's see. So like VP Squire said, if you don't know the terms, ask the committee for clarification. Please ask questions. And I think that's something in the during slide. But also do research on the committee members. What do they do? You know, what do they teach? You know, are they an administrator? Are they a faculty? Are they a part of the academic senate? You know, are they part of classified professionals? You know, just do some research on who you're going to be with. And then finally, in the before your meeting, pre-read the agenda, make sure you're aware of what's being spoken about, so that way you can come with a little bit more knowledge. But that's for any meeting, you know, any board of directors, student government, just make sure that you're prepared. Next slide.
Yeah, I just want to add something real quick.
Yeah.
You know, it depends on the campus, but a lot of your campuses, you know, you've been very involved with resolution writing. If you don't know what resolutions are, I really encourage you to go to our Friday workshop, because they'll actually be going through that but resolutions basically a way to address an issue that you see come up on your campuses that a lot of other campuses might share. Beforehand, you know, where the students took a stance, they noticed something that was happening on their campus and they wanted to put by their view, or maybe it said that they wanted, you know, where are we at with that? Just want to encourage everyone to do that as well.
Catherine, unfortunately, you broke up for like the last 5 minutes of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you know where I left off?
I'm unfortunately going to say I didn't hear anything past resolution process.
Okay.
So do you want to take another crack at it?
Yeah, can you hear me okay now though?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So gonna try to repeat everything I just said, but a really useful way that campuses have been accustomed to addressing problems is through resolution writing. If you don't know what that is, please attend our Friday workshop on resolution writing. We'll be going through that process. But resolutions are basically a way that an SBA has chosen to take a stance on an issue, or has also made a decision about a way that they want to address a problem that they're noticing on their campus. And so a lot of the time, your campus will have already passed some resolutions that are available in the record. And so you want to make sure and go back and review any of those resolutions that might have come up, you know, maybe in the past couple years, because you know, you want to bring that perspective to the table of your committee as well, and make sure that if an SBA from the past identified a problem that related to your committee, you want to come back and say, hey, you know, this is something that the students in the past identified. Has this been fixed? Is this something that we still need to work on? And also, if they, you know, if they voted on the stance for a particular issue, you want to be asking those questions. Why was this voted on this way? Are we, you know, are we aligning with the students' priorities? Are we aligning with their interests and on this committee? So just want to make that point.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the facilities committee for my college, and we had the very fun task of making our 5-year master plan. Oh, Cheryl's laughing because she knows the pain. It is such a pain to make a 5-year master, because half of it might not even get done. You know, half of it might not even get done. And then for us as a student, for us, the AAS, we had to bring it back, and the process we created was that everyone would rank them individually, like every senator and board member and director. And then at a meeting, we would compare and make our recommendations, but then everyone else, and then it could get messed up. And, you know, but I think just definitely making sure that you have that heft of, this is what the students, you know, we've already had this resolution or these resolutions. So I totally agree with you on that, Catherine. Cheryl, if you want to pop in, by the way, if you have anything to say, don't hesitate. But during meeting, sometimes this is, usually the most important part, but these are all equally important. Bring something to take notes with. There will always be things, and this is every single meeting, bring something to take notes with. There will be things that maybe you'd like to follow up with the chair. Hey, what is this, what does this mean for students? Or what does this mean in concept to the district? If there are questions you have during the meeting, ask them, because no one will penalize you for asking a question. Because if you have a question, most times other people have that question. And that's something that I think is very, very important in a meeting is, as much as, we'd like to think that we know a lot, even if you do know a lot, no one knows everything. So, and people understand that. So asking questions is one of the best things you can do to educate yourself on a specific issue, especially if they're on the topic already. Some questions like Catherine has very, very nicely highlighted in this slide. Is this information or decisions I need to take back to my constituent group? Like the 5-year master plan, we had to take that back. We had to gather, opinions and stuff along those lines. So is this decisions that I should get back and get their perspective and information and then come back later with a more informed decision? I apologize, I live next to an airport. How can I address the student issues that are coming up in my committee's work? Also, something is that the chair will usually ask for the student opinion if this is a very specific, this is a student issue. But if you're curious about what is and isn't a student issue, ask. Because 9 times out of 10 they will tell you. The chairs will tell you. Community members and the members of that committee will look to you to say, okay, so what does the students think about this? Do they want a new pool? Do they want either a pool or a welcome center? What's the feedback here? Because that is your duty, is to give the student viewpoint. So also something, never be late. Being late shows a lack of preparation and care, because all of these faculty members of classified professionals, academic senate, administrators associations, they have busy schedules, so and they aren't late. Well, maybe sometimes. Maybe sometimes they are late. Like, don't get me wrong. I've seen late administrators. My vice president of student services, love her to death, late every meeting. But so just know that, you want to try and be as on time or early as you can. Just that way you don't miss anything. That's the big thing, is like maybe there's introductions or icebreakers that could help. Or if there's any questions that you have that you could ask before the meeting that you didn't get a chance to ask in your meetings before. Catherine, Cheryl, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna just give some advice based on my experience. I heard a phrase, I think at the start of my term as a student trustee, and it always stuck with me into every meeting I went, and it was to go into a meeting always expecting to learn something new out of it. And so I think that's kind of the mindset you want to have going into every single meeting, knowing that you're not going to know everything.
Catherine, you're cutting out.
Helps you kind of get into the engaged mind. Hello?
You cut out a bit for there. You cut out a bit there, Catherine.
Okay, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Yeah, the first piece of advice I was just going to give is always go into a meeting expecting to learn something. And then the second is, being in these committees is often a really, really intimidating experience when you're surrounded by faculty and admin members who have literally known each other for years, like a really long time, and they're really close, almost like, having family in the same room. And it's just a really weird, awkward experience. It can be just surrounding yourself with people who are literally asking each other, hey, how's your kids? How's your family? And I think, Ben, that's something that we've both gone through where you're just kind of, in the corner of the room and kind of wondering where you fit in. But it's important to remember you have the same rights as everyone else in the room. Your perspective and your story and voice are just as valuable as everyone else. And so I just want to put that out there. And the other tip I have, just to make it a less intimidating experience, because I think that's kind of what usually overwhelms students going into these committees, is find someone that you can develop a relationship with and that you're comfortable with. And maybe that's one or two people that you sit next to for the entire meeting. And if you have a question or you're unfamiliar with something and you don't want to kind of interrupt the whole room, because that can happen as well, maybe you just kind of lean over to the person next to you, and since it's someone that you're comfortable with, it's easier to kind of ask questions to that person.
I want to echo that. Definitely, tag on to somebody, and maybe it's a faculty member or classified professional that you've worked with previously through class or through one of the offices that you route through for registration or financial aid or accounts or library or something. But, so that can certainly help. But at the same time, you may walk in and not recognize one face or name at all. And so, connect with somebody. And chances are every committee is going to have someone that will be very inviting to the student more than others, even though we're always happy to see a student. And that middle bullet in that list, are there any assumptions the committee is making about the student perspective that's incorrect? I think that's really important, particularly if you're, now attending a meeting where maybe there hasn't been really active student participation previously. It's really easy for those of us participating on those committee members or committee as faculty members to make assumptions based on our own student experiences, and those aren't the same as yours. We, probably weren't at the same college. We probably were in a different place and time. And so, help us understand what is the student perspective, and recognize you both have your own personal perspective, and then you have your representative voice, and make clear when you're sharing either of those two perspectives. Well, from my perspective, or, our Senate or our student Senate has this perspective. And then, this is what we learned in from the conversations we've had with ASB or something. So, think about how to communicate those, but the student voice is critical.
I agree. I think there was, so Catherine, piggybacking on what you said, I went into my first curriculum committee meeting and I was like, are there seats? Are there assigned seats to people? Is there a seating chart or something? Just like, cause it was a little daunting. I'm like, they make the curriculum for this entire college, but my one to two meetings in, I realized like, these are just normal people. They have a job, and we're there to do that job. And just knowing that you all have the common goal, you all have a common goal, that you want to see student success. No one really wants to see students fail, because that's how audits happen. And that's just not how we I think anyone wants to work at college. So you all have a common goal, and I totally agree with Cheryl. There can be assumptions based on student experience, and I've seen it myself, and it's just what it is. It's your job to overcome those obstacles, and make them change their view about students and the student perspective, and how active and how you can participate very lively in debate about certain things. So totally agree.
I see we have a question in chat.
Tony?
So do we have any suggestions for lack of communication in regards to meeting schedules? Maya says last year, although they pressed for it, it was the end of the fall semester before they received meeting times. Yeah. I would say keep asking, at least from the faculty side. Ideally we have things posted and we send everything out via everyone email lists, or have things posted on the website well in advance. No matter the good intentions, I know that doesn't happen for every meeting in every space, because faculty get frustrated with that, and our colleagues as well. And so keep asking. I don't know if Catherine or Ben, you have other advice.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of take this on too. If you have a first meeting and the chair, just ask for a list of the meeting dates. Usually they have one of those on hand, and if not, they can usually email you. I know when it's a student who's asking to an entire committee of faculty and admin, sometimes it's hard to get those. So what I actually did is I had my advisor kind of connect with them instead, since she kind of had a closer relationship to them, and she actually got the meeting dates for all our committees for the entire year. So that, I think, it kind of is a workaround for that. Ben, do you want to say anything?
Wow, I wish I could have all my meeting. Gosh, give me the number of your advisor. Let's see. Yeah, I think typically for me, it was in my experience at my college, like a few weeks before the committee, you'd get an email, does this time work for everybody, or something along those lines. And then if you have a class, they'll work with you. Like, that's the thing. But if there is just a meeting time that works for everybody, but you can always send an alternate as well. They might not be as knowledgeable on what's going on in the committee, but that is up to you as a student and as the primary representative to let them know what's going on, just at this meeting, But no, yeah, meeting times, like Cheryl said, keep asking. Just ask the department chair. Well, okay, wait, I don't know about that, but ask further up the ladder. If you aren't getting a response, call. That's something else, is that just make sure that you're present and you just keep asking for it. So, do you want to go to the next slide, or?
Yeah, are you okay? I just wanted to make sure you were done.
All right, after the meeting. So after the meeting is where all the dissemination of information comes back to your constituents. So you want to report back to your student government. You want to your next Senate meeting, to the next executive meeting. There should be a place about committee reports in your agenda. If there's not, then it'll just be in your reports as an officer or as a member. But just make sure that that your student government is very knowledgeable about what's going on and the changes that are being made, if any, in those committees. Because that's where the student voice will happen, is in that conversation about what's going on, is when one of your members goes, well, shouldn't we have input on this, or shouldn't this not happen, or shouldn't this be taken a different way? So that's where it really comes down to it. Again, I apologize, I live next to an airport. Let's see. And then also, you want to report back to your students. Something that I've found that helps me a lot is I hold town halls on important topics. If we're talking about the 5-year master plan, I want to know what their opinions are. I want to know what the general student population wants to hear about, what they want for their campus in the next 5 years. Now, I used to hold town halls in person. Obviously, we cannot do that right now. But virtual town halls work just the same. And virtual town halls, you could also have it with like your college president. Have it with some faculty, and have it with some academic senate, classified professionals, administrators associations, so they can also be privy to the raw student voice and what the students are advocating for. Also, this is important, but identify what topics should be brought back. You don't need to bring back every single line of dialogue that was discussed at the committee, but just highlight it down to some key points that you feel that your students and your constituents should be privy to. Continue to attend future meetings, remain engaged, and have periodic meetings with the chair or your committee as needed. Something that I found helped me a lot was I had monthly meetings with the chairs of the committees that I served on, because that was just something that it was sort of like a pre-committee meeting. It helped me get through the agenda a little quicker. It helped me, if I didn't understand something, they could be like, oh, well, it's just a degree deletion, or oh, it's just a request for some laptops, something like that. Especially in college council or the main apex governing body. I would definitely have some meetings with those ahead of time. Let's see, keep an alternate representative, like I said, ready just in case, because you always want to maintain that student voice. You never really want there to be a vacancy. I know that at the beginning of the semesters, it can be difficult with the lack of membership in your student body, and some people are on like 7 or 8 or 9 committees because there's just that many. But you do want to maintain that student voice. You want to maintain an alternate representative just in case, for the off chance that you're sick, or that you have a class that's meeting, you have an exam, just so that way you could just text them, hey, I need you to go, or something like that. And then they know what to do, and they're apprised of everything that's going on with the committee. And then that way they can be a good voice for the students. And then this whole process starts over again. Prepare for the next meeting, so Cheryl, Catherine, if you wanted to hop in.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and really emphasize just having a system where you're able to have alternate representatives in the case that you need to. You know, I actually had a conversation with Cheryl and Ben about this as well. You know, the number one complaint on behalf of committees is that students come, you know, the first couple meetings and then they don't show up for the rest of the semester, or they don't show up for the rest of the year. And so as the SBA, you're really, really losing out on your role as being a student representative on those committees. And so it's really important to make sure that there's constantly representation, because they may be, you know, considering ideas that if you were on that committee and you attended that meeting, you wouldn't want that for students. Maybe you know that students would say something else, or they would be in objection to that particular issue. So you really, really want to make sure that you're in the room when these important decisions are being made. And Cheryl, go ahead and add if you'd like.
I would absolutely echo that. And, you know, get a sense for what local culture is relevant or relative to alternate representatives. In some cases, you might both be able to attend the meeting regularly so that, you know, you and your alternate essentially are both well prepared and part of the conversation, but then maybe the students only have one voice. I've encouraged folks in some cases with extra faculty to make sure that they do that so that faculty are ready to step in. But some campuses will work with that to make sure that voice is there and engaged and well informed. Others are a little more strict about you get one student at the meeting, and I hope that's less frequently the case. But you know, see if you have an alternate who's engaged, and that puts them in an even better position to take over once you move on and do something else.
Yeah, I mean, I know that oh, sorry, Catherine, I didn't mean to run you over.
Go ahead. I was just gonna ask if you had anything to add.
Oh, I do. No, I was just gonna add, like, that's exactly what Emma and I do. Emma McNellis, the Regional Affairs Director for Region 5, we both serve on DTAC, you know, and so she and I both attend the meetings, you know, and we alternate between, you know, who's the voting member, you know. So this is it's so that way, you know, Emma's here, oh my gosh, okay. Let's see, so she's been incredible as an alternate member, but it's making sure that they are there as well, if you can, you know, if they can make the committee meeting, they should go, you know, that if they're taking their duties truly and making sure that they are being a voice, even as an alternate member, they should go. So
if I could say one more thing too, Ben said earlier that, you know, the meeting schedules will change to fit your schedule. Ideally, that's the case. I will say on campuses, there may be committees that have met on the same day and the same time for years. And so it's important for the Senate to ask that, you know, which of these committees already have schedules established, and then be careful to make sure to appoint folks who can attend during that time. You know, other committees may be totally flexible and create a schedule based on the input of all of its members. But it is important to know that there are some that have been set, again, for years. And so faculty start to build schedules around those meetings, and then we would want to make sure to have student representatives that can be present. And you know, the best way to do that is to ask in advance, does this committee always meet at this time? Or is there a chance to, you know, have input into the meeting time? I think it's a great question to ask. Part of that in advance and even before the first meetings happen.
Yeah, I think when the appointment first happens of that student, you know, like you'll see that with committees that are district wide most times. Like if you're in a multi-college district, like the Grossmont Cuyamaca, my college district, our district executive council, that's been set in stone for years. Like, you know, like Cheryl says, both curriculum committees, you know, those have been there for years. Those are set in stone. It's the first Monday at 4, you know, those. So it's stuff like that. So I definitely want to parrot that.
Yeah, I think the last thing I would just mention when it comes to alternates is, you know, have a system, make sure that if you can't make the meeting, you text them, hey, can you go to this? But don't leave it at that, right? You want to make sure that you're not completely throwing in an alternate representative unprepared, doesn't know what they're getting themselves into, doesn't know what has been going on in the committee. So make sure you're providing some background context always, you know, letting them know, hey, this is what's on the agenda. Send them the agenda if you have it, make sure that they have a copy of it, and let them know, you know, this is what they might ask your input on. These are the issues that might come up. and then this is what the committee's been working on. Make sure that you're actually prepping them, because it's, you know, it's fine to have them go in and, you know, at least you have student representation there, but you need to make sure that they're prepared always to be able to intervene and still effectively represent your students.
Actually, Catherine, I just wanted to say one thing. Well, two things. Very, very short, I promise. One, the alternate, don't please try to give your alternate representative time in advance, you know, if they need to plan, because if you just like text them 5 minutes before the meeting, or just like, hey, can't make it, you know, you need to attend, or can you attend, or something like that. Also, if you do know that you're going to be sending an alternate, or your alternate will be the voting member, please communicate that to the chair if you have that time. That way they know and they are prepared. And even if you know before the meeting date, they can change it on the agenda. You know, just please, that just know it, having them have that knowledge. Also, it communicates a sense of respect that, you know, you care about the committee to the point and your role. You know, my second point is an active student in a committee is very different from a non-active student, because there is that student, and I know Catherine and, you know, Cheryl, you've probably seen it, where it's they're there, you know, they are present, you know, they're there for the roll call, but they are not participating in the debate. They are not giving really back. They're not taking it back to the student government. It's just, they're sort of there as a seat filler. And there might be things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. And that's a totally different case of worms. But just make sure that you're being the best representation for your students that you can during those committees, because it is genuinely, that's the view that, you know, faculty and staff and academic senate and classified professionals and academic administrators association have of the student government, is, are there engaged students? So anyways, I promise you, that's it.
Actually, I want one thing to add on to that, because you just brought up a really good point. You know, as student leaders, you're all student leaders on your SBA, you're also in the position to hold other student leaders on your SBA accountable. So making sure that when you're reporting back to your SBA, you're also asking the same questions that you're asking yourself about your committee to others in the room, who are also student leaders. And I think that's so important, because you're going to realize pretty quickly, you know, who are the ones who have been engaged and who are the ones that have not. And it's super important to keep each other accountable, because you need to make sure that you're having good representation, right? So all goes back to that. All right, before I go into this slide, are there any questions so far?
No questions in the chat, Chair.
Okay, I think I just saw one pop up.
Yes, VPC just raised her hand.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take VPC, and then I see one in the chat as well.
Okay, so my question is that, is there a good method for holding your officers accountable? Like, is that best effective through like actual written reports, or like, I don't know, just do you have any suggestions for holding them accountable?
Ben, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are of course ways in the bylaws and the Constitution to do that, and there are methods outlined. But the best part is, if you have a relationship, just pull them aside. You know, pull them aside. You know, privately. Don't try not to do it at a student government meeting. You know, try not to do it in front of their peers, because, you know, if this is your first attempt to reach out to this person, try to pull them aside. You know, well, right now, you know, pull them into a Zoom call and just be like, hey, you know, is everything okay, or something like that? Because maybe there is, again, something going on. Because if there's something going on, then maybe that's something that you can help them address and help them chart a path forward. But if there's nothing going on, then and if they're not really heeding advice, that's when you're going to bring it up to your either the president or your student government, and just, you know, make people aware that this is happening, that this person is doing this thing, that you've made multiple attempts to help them correct it. But Catherine, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna add one tip I wanted to point out, I want to go back to the slide because these questions, we actually I'm going to start over. In my SBA at the beginning of my term, a lot of these questions are actually questions that my SBA came up with at the beginning before we started attending our meetings. And so they were kind of guiding questions. We literally took a huge poster board and wrote all of them on them, all the questions on there. And so we had every member of our SBA take a picture so that way when they went into their committee meetings, you know, they wouldn't be just sitting there not doing anything, but they would be taking notes. They would be taking note of what they needed to bring back. And so that was our way of ensuring that everyone was staying engaged because we had the questions up in the room we were meeting in. And so everyone knew that once we came back and kind of reported out that those were the questions that we should be answering. And so when there's that kind of common understanding amongst everyone, it just makes it easier to hold each other accountable because everyone knows what the set standard has been. So that's just one tip I want to give out.
Chair, our next question in the chat is, what advice would you give to a student who is in their first year in student government and are a part of committees?
Ben, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it from my own experience. Please don't bite off more than you can chew. Please, please, if you think that, you know, if your schedule can only hold, you know, maybe 2 committees, don't join 5. Don't do what I did. I joined like every committee because I was like, yeah, I'm the student voice and stuff like that, and that didn't go so well. You know, things fell by the wayside. So just please be mindful of your time and also respectful of your mental health, because, you know, this is a time to, you know, that everyone is going through it. You know, no, we're not in our offices, you know, we're in our bedrooms or living rooms or kitchens. So just be mindful that, yes, while it's a Zoom call, so it might be easier accessibility wise, you don't have to go across campus. Try and schedule some time for yourself. Don't leave one Zoom call and just hop right back to another. You know, get some food, you know, maybe take some time. But also, aside from that, make sure that these committees are the ones that you care about, you know, because if you're in a committee, if you're a poli-sci major, or if you're a major that, you know, you might not really care about the committee, that's just not something, you can't have that passion. You know, just make sure that this is something that you're passionate about and something that you genuinely can see change happen. Because if you can't see the change that you want to make, then maybe that's a deeper question, you know. Also, like Cheryl said, I'm sure, Cheryl, if you want to speak on this a little bit more, don't be nervous. It's okay to be nervous, you know. Not don't be nervous. That was a bad, I shouldn't have said that. You can be nervous. It's okay. Okay, that's it. I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, you know, to summarize, pick a couple committees, but because quantity over quality all the time. But also pick committees that you're passionate about, that you know you're going to always be interested and engaged in. Because if you're not, there's just, you're probably not the best representation for that committee, maybe, because there may be another SBA member who has, you know, a bigger interest in that committee's work and wants to be a little bit more involved. So pick something that, you know, falls within your interest. The other thing I want to say, sorry, I just lost my train of thought completely. The other thing I want to say is that it takes a while to kind of adjust to starting to use your voice as a first year student. I can say that based off of experience, you know, going into my first committee, it's not easy to speak up. It's not easy to interject and interrupt people. It's a really intimidating experience. You know, thankfully I had really supportive faculty and admin members, but not all committees are going to be like that, unfortunately, and that's just the reality. So I just want to say, you know, it gets easier as time goes on to become more vocal, to start learning how to use your voice and what areas to use your voice in. And so I just want to say that as well.
Chair, we have one more hand raised, Maya Henderson.
Sorry. Yeah. So I just have a piggyback on the first question. As far as reporting back to, the student body when we're in our meetings, do you guys have or know of a report template, something that we could just, plug in our notes and have those ready for our meetings when we go back to report to the board?
Yeah, so we don't have a report template, but I would, this PowerPoint is attached to this app for this conference, and I would just guide you back to these guiding questions. You know, this is really what you want to be taking note of. We're also going to be talking about a resource we have at the end of this that includes kind of these guiding questions that you can take back and have a record of as well. So I'll hold off on talking about that till the end. That is towards the end of our presentation, but yeah, we'll get into that for you.
I did want to say, Catherine, something, talk to your president, talk to your SBA. Maybe they do have a report template. I know that for my SBA, we do have a template that you could just plug in the things and report to your president. But just make sure that you communicate. If there is no report template, then maybe just a verbal report or something along those lines. But yeah, just communicate with your SBA.
Thank you.
Cheryl, anything you want to add?
I just added in the chat in response to Ruby, just that first year, just recognize so much information will be new. It will likely be confusing. I hear that from faculty as well. So it's not even just students. It's folks who are new on these committees where we've been speaking a different language for a while. And so that's okay. Ask the questions. It can be really helpful to find that friendly face and kind of engage before and after the meetings. If you're not quite comfortable, as Catherine said, speaking up and having your voice yet. The more comfortable you get talking, even if it's just one-on-one before or after, the more, in time, the more comfortable you'll feel speaking up in the meeting. But also know that, as faculty, we want to hear the student voice. And so, we'll encourage, we'll cheer you on, and we'll do what we can to coach you into speaking up. But it's okay to feel a little bit overwhelmed and confused and lost to begin with. Hang tight and let us know what you need.
Definitely. Thank you for that. So we'll go ahead and move into the next slide. So this is really just kind of overview how to be the best representative for your students. Student leaders, it's important to balance the many student perspectives on your campus. You have so many diverse different student populations. You have veteran students, undocumented students, students of color, minorities, first generation. And so there's just a lot of different perspectives that you need to know about. And so I really encourage you to definitely do your homework on what student populations are on your campus. That can help you kind of gear conversations in your committees a little bit better. But the easiest way to know what matters to your students is to talk to them, right? And so take advantage of the opportunities in your student government meetings. A lot of the times your SBAs are made up of that exact diversity. So, have those one-on-one conversations with those members and find out, what's important to them. But also beyond that, you want to get out into the student population itself. So making sure that if your SBA is holding events or activities or town halls, making sure that you're being more of a listener than a talker is really important. Reaching out to those clubs, and a lot of colleges have really active interclub councils as well. So those are all great opportunities. But also, for yourself, I just talked a lot to the students in my classes and my friends as well, because being a political science major, you found a lot of those students who were actively involved in your classes, and I'm sure a lot of other majors as well. It's easier to talk to those in your classes, and also just your friends. Your friends are great resources to go to as well. And then, if you find yourself still needing kind of that student input, that student perspective, you're not quite grasping it, make sure that you're organizing platforms like town halls for larger, more important issues. If your college is, not to say this would happen at a CCC, but I've seen it happen a lot at the UC. If your college is thinking about a tuition increase, that's something that you would definitely want to know from the students, how they feel about that, and how much that matters and what their opinions are. But there are similar issues like that that are really, really important to address and make sure that you, you advertise it out there widespread. Ben, do you want to talk about anything else?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. One of the things that I held a town hall on was our mascot. That's something for, I know Imperial Valley College down in Region 10 is going through a mascot change where they're finding that their mascots are not representative of their community. And also, they can be racist in some ways, they can be perceived as racist. So I know that they're going through a change. So I know that the president, Jorge Silva, he held a town hall about what mascots they would want to see, from their college, what they would want to see their college represented as. So, just know that these really big issues, I know you might not think that, students you might think that students will just be there to just get in and get out. But there are quite a few students that will care about a lot of these issues if you bring them to their attention. That's one of the biggest things, is making sure that the students around you know what decisions are being made and making sure that you have the proper channels to broadcast that information. Because a lot of, from what I've seen, the problems for SBAs are they don't have an accurate channel to just, broadcast these changes in information beyond flyers and social media posts. But work with your college administrations to get an email list, to get an email blast, or something along those lines. But yeah, I think that's great, Catherine.
Yeah, I just want to mention, my experience as a student trustee. I actually had like a monthly newsletter, and it was like just a one-page newsletter that I sent out to all the clubs, all the centers I knew of on campus that I was familiar with. And it basically had just the most important information I thought students should know for that month. And that's something, really simple, really easy that I did maybe within 30 minutes of just a random day, but it does pay off. Your work does pay off. And so making sure that you're taking every opportunity, for me, talk about two other ways to publicize. My college actually has a radio station. And so we have a radio channel. And that was a huge way that we broadcasted a lot of the information because we knew that our students were listening, on their way into class. And so that was one thing. The other thing is we had a newspaper that we would distribute. You could get copies all around campus. So that's another great way to just publicize information and issues that you think are important and that your students should know. Ben, do you have any additional?
Yeah, I mean, I know my campus we have a newspaper, and well, now it's a newsletter. But yeah, we have that distribution. We have the Griffin Radio, which I love to pieces, which is our radio station. And I think just making sure that you also talk to the clubs, that they know what's going on as well, because like you said, ICC, very important, interclub council. Making sure that these clubs can then, that's a further distribution channel, is, taking it to ICC, and then ICC takes it to the clubs. And then these clubs can take it back to their general population, Also working with organizations on your campus like Umoja and Puente and EOPS and CalWorks. So I think that's also very, very important. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Do we have any questions at this point? Alrighty. So it looks like we'll move on. So we are nearing the end of the presentation. We are going to leave about the last 10 minutes for any just lingering questions that you all might have. Feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand after this. But we do want to definitely hope everyone stays involved with us. I want to present everyone with an opportunity. The Student Senate for California Community Colleges has a number of external committees that we hold with partner organizations, including the Chancellor's Office, ASCCC, which is the Academic Senate organization for California Community Colleges, FACCC, which is the faculty version of that. And so these committees range, they cover a different variety of topics, from basic needs diversity, equity, and inclusion. They also cover certain student populations. So, you know, if you're a veteran student, we have a committee for that. If you're an undocumented student, you know, there's a variety of committees. There's a lot. I'm not going to go through them all. We have about 25 or 30, but just want to present the opportunity. This link, it's available in the PowerPoint on the app. If you go to it, you'll find our application, and so you'll be able to fill it out and express interest if you're interested in serving on any of those. The second resource I mentioned a bit ago is that we have a participatory governance guide. So kind of goes a little bit more in depth than the information we covered here today. It does have, I know there was a student who asked about, you know, how is there like a report template that I can take back to my SBA? There's some information in that governance guide that can help you report back to your SBA if that's the case. And although it's actually for our external committee appointments, a lot of the information in there is actually relevant to you still as you're sitting on the committees of your SBA and at your campus. So really encourage you to take a look at it. It's something that you can just have on hand also as you're in your meetings, and it's easy to look back to if you're confused about something. So just want to mention that. Oh yeah, and our VPF just put the links in the chat, so feel free to look at those now as well. But yeah, that really concludes the end of our presentation. As always, we encourage you to stay connected with us too. If you want to see additional opportunities arise from us, we are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter here. So this is our information to find us on those 3 platforms. And then, yeah, we'll just leave it here and open it up for questions if anyone would like to. But again, just want to thank everyone for coming. Your voice is so important. Don't forget that fundamentally changes the design of our system. And so, you know, just keep that in mind. You have rights as a student, and your voice is so powerful.
Chair, I see a hand raised from RAD Region 3.
Yeah,
Hi. I have a question, but I was just gonna note that I think the link to sign up isn't working right now. But so one point that I brought up a little bit earlier in the chat was about like finding allies and mentors within participatory governance. But kind of on that same note, what is your advice, let's say, for a student who isn't as vocal about something wrong that may be happening within a PDC with, let's say, another member? What would be like your advice for them to be able to deal and address that? And it could be any student. It doesn't have to be someone who's shy or not so vocal. That could, again, happen to anyone. So what would be your kind of advice for students who find themselves in those situations where they're dealing with other members of the participatory governance committees that may be volatile? Or
All
just
right, yeah, definitely. So I'll go ahead and take it first, and then Ben and Cheryl, if you want to add anything, feel free to. But I would say, you know, your backing resource always is going to be your SBA. So if there's something going on in the committee, if they're being hostile towards you and they shouldn't be, or if they're just kind of ignoring your perspective, worst case scenario, but sometimes that does happen. Your SBA is really your resource to go to, as well as your advisor, and they can, you know, best help you how to handle that. But you know, if you're not feeling supported, you know that your SBA is always going to be in that position to support you, right? And so just wanted to add that. But Ben, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, they're your backup. You know, they're the there's a word in John Wayne. Anyways, let's see. Sorry, I'm a very old soul. Let's see. They're the people that you can go back to and be like, they're doing this, you know, they're not helping, or they're being hostile or something like that. And then unfortunately, we did have a case of that at my college, and what we did is we showed up, you know, all of our SBA came to that meeting, you know, and we each individual made a public comment and stuff along those lines. And, you know, it's demonstrations like those that can really, because they can see a student, and even if it is an active student, they can see a student, but once they really see the gravity of the student government and the student body association, it's a different type of feeling, and how active and engaged they are within this process. So I think that is very, very important. Unfortunately, you might come across it. It just might happen, but hopefully it doesn't happen often or at all in your community college track.
Yeah, I do want to mention one of the personal experiences I got involved with as well last year as a director. And some of you might have heard about this college, but you know where I'm going with this. There was a college called Ohlone College. It's in Region 4, I believe. And their SBA basically got shut down by their college. They had their funding frozen. They were not given permission to meet on campus. The college was just trying every single thing they possibly could to just limit the SBA from meeting and from being able to be involved in college matters. And it was this huge thing, like none of us had heard of something like that happening before. And the Student Senate actually got behind them and said, this isn't right. Like, you're taking away students' 9+1 rights and being able to be that voice and that representation for students. So we ended up taking a support stance as an organization alongside them, but they also had a Board of Trustees meeting coming up, and the SBA basically invited anyone who wanted to come flood the Board of Trustees meeting, because they had the agenda. They had a couple agenda items on to get their funding restored and to get the ban lifted from them being able to meet on campus. And so I was actually there. I drove up about 2 hours to get there. But you had students coming in from all over California. The room was packed, and we were all there. We all gave public comments. And it worked. They restored the funding, they lifted the ban, and everyone kind of kept in contact with them to make sure that their college was collaborating and they were able to start forming those relationships and rebuilding. But that's an example of that, right? And so it really demonstrates how powerful the student voice can be when you have so many students uniting together for a cause like that. Ben, do you want to add? I know you were kind of agreeing with that.
So when you come into stuff like this, where it's very blatant that the college is attempting to, for whatever reason, go to this length, it's a very different circumstance. Because we never want to be at odds with the college, with the administration, with the academic senate, with the faculty, with the classified professionals. I think that's no one's goal, unless you're trying to genuinely create drama, which no one wants. But in stuff like this, students, like you saw at Ohlone College, stick together, and I think that's one of the binding factors, is the fact that you can reach out and have this support network of students that will, if they see something wrong, go and show up. And, I know the SSCCC did a statement of support for Ohlone College. There's stuff like that. And then, but just, if it is ever that bad, which no, it shouldn't ever get that bad, just make sure that you have your voice there, that you will never lose your voice as a student, and that the students that you represent have a voice as well. Like Catherine said, that I wasn't there, but it was packed. That is just the true representation of students. So that's me.
And just to add on, I think that's why the beauty of our regions is that you kind of have that community supporting you. And that's why I think it's so important for every college to be involved in your region, because if something like that happens, you know who to turn to for support. And then I think, Cheryl, did you want to add?
I was going to say exactly that the example is a great example of sometimes you can handle stuff locally on your campus, and Catherine's advice to rely back on your local SBA as well as your advisor as resources, I think is critical. But sometimes you don't feel like that's enough. And so knowing that you have the Student Senate, your regional reps and beyond as additional resources, whether it's just to ask a question of, or in the case of Ohlone, to really help to mobilize, that's powerful to know that you have that support. You're not in any of this alone as local student leaders. And that's important to remember, as well as just the power of mobilizing students and engaging the student voice. There's a lot that can be accomplished.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Cheryl. Hopefully that answers your question. I can't remember who asked that, but yeah. Are there any other questions at this time? I think we have time for one more question if there is. We're nearing the end of our time here.
I don't see any more questions in the chat, Chair.
All righty.
Real quick, this is Student Vice Chancellor Gain from CCSF. Where can we find that report template that was mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so it's not a report template, but it kind of has the questions that you should be kind of taking a note of. That is in our participatory governance guide. It's actually labeled external committee guide. That's just for our external committee appointments, but it's also a resource for you to use as well.
Perfect, thank you.
That link should be in the chat, I believe. Alrighty. All right, well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Hopefully this was a helpful presentation. And if, as someone put my email in the chat, if you're having trouble still accessing these resources, I can send them out to you. And I'll make sure that link is correct on our PowerPoint as well, just in case. But yeah, just want to thank everyone for joining us and hope you have a great rest of your day.